All right, I've been looking forward to this one for a while now. I think the audience, there's going to be a lot of mention of this. I think the audience is going to fall in love with you and fall in love with this, and we're going to have a lot of fun at the same time. So, Jen, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you. It's great
Great,
to be.
yeah, great to have you here. And always the best way to start is if you can tell us, I have to explain this to guys more than women, but we'll get
Okay.
into the business stuff and all of this stuff in a minute. But tell us about you. Tell us about who you are, where you're from originally, where you are now, family, something you've never told anybody and you want to reveal to the world now. That's always kind of interesting when people do that. And then we'll get into all the other stuff. So please share.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Chicago and I currently live in Chicagoland now. And I am an only child, although my mom remarried and she had a son. So I have a wonderful brother. He lives in Germany. He's a colonel in the army and he's
Well,
commander of the hospital. He's got a beautiful family. And then I was married for 27 years. I have four children. They are all grown now. My oldest is married. So I have three girls and a boy. My twins are 22, and my son's in college, and my daughter is an esthetician. And then my youngest is Abby, and she's still living with me and still trying to figure out what she wants to do in the world. But they're
I
all
kind of know, I know the feeling. I'm still trying to figure
you're
that
still figuring it
too.
out. Yes, so that's my family. I got divorced a few years ago, and upon getting divorced, people always ask, "Is that really your real last name?" And I legally changed my last name to Loving after the divorce. My parents are deceased, and I have three girls, and they're all going to have different last names. And my son didn't care, so I just wanted to choose a name that I could really express what I want to reflect in the world. So I find it really amazing too, which we could talk a little bit about. Just the process of changing my name was, kind of interesting. Like I had to just I had to pay money, of course, and then put an ad in the newspaper in Chicagoland area for like 3 weeks in a row, and then stand before a judge and answer a bunch of questions about why I wanted to do that. So, but it was really worth it. Like I really love my name, and I love the accountability that it gives me to be loving, and um, that's been interesting. So my professional background,
We'll get to
so
that
it's
in a minute. We'll get to that in a
okay.
minute. So that's interesting. I didn't know you had to stand in front of a judge and everything. I know, well, in Canada, when Quebec tried to separate from Canada, they did rules about names and whatnot. And there was somebody that wanted to name a kid Ebony, another one was Storm. And they were even doing crazy regulations, like they had to approve babies' names, and that got thrown out of court. The government lost on that one. The separatist government lost on that one. So I didn't know you had to go through that
Yeah, the judge
maneuvering.
asked me, like, did you commit a felony? Like, why are you trying to change your name?
My name is Loving. Like, why would I commit a felony?
Just want to put more love in the world. That's why he just looked at me like, okay.
It's also fascinating to me, bigger discussion about, I know the whole history of women taking men's names because how men and women were looked upon years ago and even ownership and stuff like that. And now a lot of women are not changing names. There's nothing wrong with changing or not, each to their own, but then changing it totally. And I really appreciate that you talked to your kids about that because I think that's important too.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually you could do that. I remember it came to my mind because I had an accountant that him and his wife didn't keep either of their last names when they got married, and they just chose the last name together, and then they made that legally their last name. Like, I didn't know you could do that. That's
I didn't
fascinating.
know that either.
So, yeah, so that's what they did. And so then when I had that opportunity, I was like, that's what came to mind, and so I did it too.
Yeah, I guess some people who are into ancestry and all that, which is important, would wonder, are you going to be able to keep track and whatnot? But it'll be just a more loving future track.
Amen. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I think you've set the track already on the people that you're impacting and whatnot. So I think it's a good track. Can you share with us? You talked about your kids. And I like the fact you said you have a brother, but you didn't say stepbrother or
No.
half brother. And so I have a daughter-in-law, but we call her our bonus daughter,
Mm.
because in Denmark they don't use the other terms; they just say bonus, which I think is pretty loving, also, actually. So, and words do matter, 100%. So what were you like as a kid, or even then moving on to teenager? Were you the lemonade stand one, organizing friends, giving out free hugs? What were you doing?
Honestly, my childhood, I have a lot of trauma in my childhood, and I find a lot of entrepreneurs have a lot of trauma in their childhood. But I really did not have like the best of childhoods. My parents divorced when I was 4. My mom remarried, and she married somebody that was super controlling, and it was very challenging. And fortunately, like through a lot of healing and stuff, I've come to a place where I was able to, genuinely forgive all of that. And we now have a good relationship, which is only by the grace of God that is the truth. But my brother ended up running away, so to speak, when he was 15. I tried to get my dad to be able to have custody of me when I was 10, but the courts declined. And then when I was 16, I was able to voluntarily, choose that. And so my childhood was a lot of like protecting my brother, trying to protect my brother, I should say. And it felt like a lot like trying to survive. That was my childhood. And so I didn't really have all the typical kid experiences like, being in sports or, extracurricular activities. I would come home from school and watch my brother, and it was just, truthfully, it was a difficult childhood. It was hard. But I look back on that, and I really just take the positive out of it and focus on, those things occurred and they made me who I am today. And there's a lot of good that came out of it in the end, but it was not easy, I would say.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that because that can't be easy either. And yet we find, and I find that the impact of kids for the future, the rest of our life is really significant, even from birth to 3, like we've talked about a little bit too, the amount you take in, and if you take the positive out of it about the resilience, and there's a reason that you went all the way to loving from
Hmm.
from that, and then forgiving. It's been shown forgiving actually helps the person who's hating more than the person that was hated, if you will, because it gets it off your shoulders to some degree, and goes that way. So
Sure.
yeah, pretty amazing story just in that light, that you went from that to loving, and it tells a great tale. And then your journey went, into education, occupational therapy degree, effectively a
Yeah.
therapist and whatnot. And what were you envisioning at that point, that type of education, and what was next?
Well, when I was 17 is when I actually discovered love, like, true love, God's love, and that was very transformative. I was like, oh my gosh, like it was incredible. And so that was a definite like marker in my life, I'd say. And then I did go into occupational therapy. I was like my youngest daughter. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I was in
So it's
community
your
college.
fault she's like that.
Exactly. She's a mini me. In a lot of ways, she is. And so I was in community college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I took one of those. This is back in the day when you had the pencil, you first circled in the little hole, circles, and you took the test. And it was an interest test about, what would you, it was all these people in the world like that took this test, were categorized in that they loved their work. And so you took this test to see like where you would fall and that you would love that work. And so 5 different options came up, and one of them was occupational therapy. I'd never heard of it before. And I had a perception that I didn't like science and I wasn't good at it, but I trusted that I would have interest and I would enjoy this work. So I started, going down that track and taking, classes for that. And then I got into occupational therapy school at University of Illinois at Chicago and went there and got my degree. And it's really interesting when I look back on, I don't use that degree in the sense of occupational therapy anymore. I ended up having a business. I taught people with disabilities how to drive. So, used to have hand controls, left foot accelerator, all kinds of things to help people that had incurred physical challenges, and all kinds of things be able to return to drive and get their keys to independence back. And I loved doing that work. In the process of that business and building that, I was trying to have children, and we had tried 6 years to have kids. And so when I finally like surprise got my daughter Maddie, which we were not even trying to adopt, that's kind of a whole nother story. I got a call on a Monday and she was in my house on Friday, and we had to like call an agency and ask like, what do we do legally to keep this baby? It was very much of a surprise. But then 5 months later, did IVF and got pregnant with twins, and I could not keep this business anymore. It was very dangerous to be driving around with people with disabilities, having, being pregnant, having these little ones. So I sold the business, and that was also a miracle because I was
Wow.
only one of 11 people in the state of Illinois that had the credentials to do that type of work. So I had actually trained somebody, and it was quite a lot but it was amazing that I found somebody that would take on that business and was able to sell the business. So I started out there, but what was interesting when I look back and like what I do today, I do a lot of business coaching and speaker training, and I got into this whole world of speaking that I had never anticipated or visioned myself doing. But I noticed that the way that I was trained in occupational therapy, we did something called activity analysis. So every time, we'd spend like literally hundreds of hours, what does it take to like pick up this pen? It's like from the vision to cognition to the physical movements. And so we were able to break everything down in these little tiny pieces and analyze what it takes to do something. And so I think I use that naturally now a lot in business. I'm able to sequence things and figure things out. And that's something that I attribute to all the training I got in that field.
Yeah, it always fascinates me how there is a thread, like I said before, to where
Hmm.
things go, and it's never a linear thread, as they call it. It goes different directions, kind of like how you're supposed to run away from an alligator is zigzagging, kind of like the same way.
Yeah.
Straight ahead, you lose in a way. We
Thanks for that tip, by the way.
it,
Didn't know.
well, having lived in Florida, it was one of the first things they told me. If an alligator chases you, he will catch you all the time if you go straight ahead because he's going like this. But
Yeah,
zigzag, and he gets totally confused and screwed up. So the key is, while you're scared out of your mind, if you remember to do that, uh,
exactly.
because you
Right.
think to going linear, it's a good business analogy. You think of going linear, but you've got to pivot. You've got to
Yeah.
pivot. So
Yes.
we'll call it the Gator theory. And we'll get it
I
sponsored
like
by
that.
University of Florida or something, but whatever. We found that our firm on the premise that and the foundation that leaders and their businesses can do way better when they're doing good. And obviously that's picked up more people are more open to it. Share a little bit about your business experiences. You built multiple businesses. You started talking about that in a short time to success and showing people how to do that and impacting a lot of entrepreneurs along the way. Can you share a little bit about that part, all that stuff you do there?
Absolutely. Well, I built 5 different businesses to 6 figures. All of them got there in less than 12 months, all in different industries, and they've all reached 7 figures in revenue, which is, when I look back on that, it's like, wow, that is really amazing.
Yeah.
I think that I reflect back on several reasons I think that I was able to do that. Number one, my dad, when I was 16, I moved in with my dad, and he was working a blue collar job, fixing buses for Chicago for the CTA. And then he was able to retire after he put in like over 20 years, and he ended up starting a limousine business. And so I really helped my dad start this business and watched the entrepreneurial journey, was part of it with him. And I really learned a lot, and he was super inspiring in my life. He was such a he did such a good job of imparting to me the relationship you have with money. He was super generous and just very fun and loved life, and I'm grateful for all the gifts that I got from my dad. But oh my God, I totally lost track of what I was talking about. What was I talking
But growing the businesses and helping entrepreneurs along the way.
Yeah, sorry, I got stuck on my dad. I lost my dad like 10 or 11
No,
years ago.
that's good. Well, obviously you got a lot of how to do it when you saw your dad start that business and
Oh
helping him
yeah,
start that
so I was going to
business.
share. It's because he was so generous. And I read 2 books that I believe were foundational to my success in business. And the first one is called Go Giver by Bob Berg. There's several Go Giver books, but the red one was the one that I read first. And it's all about approaching business with a spirit of generosity and really being a giver and looking for how can you serve and how can you give to others. And that's just been part of the fabric of like how I do business now. And that is, I think, one of the things that has helped me a lot. And then the other piece is this book called Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And it's all about principles for life. And I have read that book. In fact, I've been coaching it for 20 years. this is my first one. Like it's like, I mean, I think I've like digested
I
it.
guess so.
And so now I'm like on the fourth edition of that because I feel like principles is such a powerful way to live life and to even buy business, like growing business through principles. And so I think that's also one of the reasons I've had success. And then the third part is a blueprint. Like I was sharing with you about the activity analysis and the training I got in occupational therapy. I was really able, I think, watching my father and then starting my own driver rehab business and then coming home with four little kids and starting another business from home. I was able to like create that framework and what is the activity analysis of like how do you build an entrepreneurial business. And a lot of people out there are have entrepreneurial businesses, but they're really really good at their core business, but like how do they do the entrepreneurial side of it? And so this framework and this blueprint that I created is a really powerful answer to that. And it's the one I used. And I didn't know that I was doing it. It's get that unconscious competence. I was probably my third business, and I had a coach challenge me and say, you have some methodology for business. Like, it doesn't matter which business it is, you just like build it quickly. And I never really thought about it until she challenged me to think about what is that methodology. So that's when I kind of put together that framework and that blueprint and said, oh, this is what I've been doing. And I shared it with others and it, duplicated and they were able to have great success too. It's just a matter of figuring that piece out. So I think that's where that all came from.
No, it's great because we do a lot of work with what we call untapped talent, and every person has value without
Mm,
a doubt.
yes.
Um, and they have founders have a certain expertise type of thing, and but the smart founders know, how to get a team involved, et cetera, et cetera. But I think people, customers, partners, relationships, when you respect the authenticity of the principles, respect the fact that you're doing business the right way, and I think and it's not the whole ball game, but I think it really comes through in the sense that people want to work for you, they want to engage with you, they want to be your customer, they want to be an investor, whatever. Um, does that make
That's
sense?
all a personal development. The more you grow personally, the more your business grows. It's kind of an extension reflection of you, is what I've witnessed. And, if you're living by principles, you have integrity, like you said, if you do what you say you're going to do and I mean, all the things that come with those principles then make for good, healthy business practices. So I totally, yeah.
You're not a salesman, you're a partner almost in a way. And I anytime a client says, I'd like to make you a preferred vendor, I said, I'd rather you make me a preferred partner than a
Yeah.
preferred vendor. It's again words, but words can matter in that sense. If you're
Operation.
if you're comfortable with this, can you share some of your personal experiences around health? Um, specifically, cancer and how you evolved and addressed it. Resiliency wise, and then you became president of Handing Hope.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I shared about my dad. So my mom and my dad and my best friend all died within a year and a half. And they're all like you and I, like, I mean, they were doing life. My dad has business, my, best friend had a business, my mom worked full time. And you would have never known in a million years that they were gonna be not here in the near future. They were all diagnosed with end stage cancer. My best friend had brain cancer, and my dad had lung cancer, and my mom got pancreatic cancer. And they were they were 65. My parents were 65, and my best friend was 40.
No.
And she had four kids just like I did. Her name was Jen, just like mine. She had three girls and a boy, just like me. We lived
Holy
15 minutes.
cow.
Like, I mean, she was in my wedding. I was in her wedding. Like, she was really my best friend. And it was really hard to, I became a power medical attorney. I made all the decisions for her. I had to like put myself in walk her shoes um, and really like make decisions with her and for her that were decisions that I would have wanted for someone to help me make in those moments. And so I I look back in all of that, and it was a really, really hard season because these were the cheerleaders in my life. These were the people that really believed in me. My love language is words of affirmation. They spoke words of affirmation over my life all the time. And it was a huge void when I lost them, really a huge void. And so I went through a season of really deep grieving. And what got me out of that was really starting to practice gratitude. I was in such a low place. I was actually really shocked. I tried 6 years to have my children. I adored my children, loved my children, but truthfully, like I was having thoughts like I didn't want to be here anymore. And, I was really getting to a low place. And I found gratitude. And not that it was missing, but like I started to actually practice it and focus on being grateful for the things that I still had instead of really focusing on what I had lost. And really just daily beginning to practice that. And gratitude has now become a huge part of my life. And I think that like every business meeting I end in gratitude. I think there's such a powerful energy about it. And it really is something that's helped brought a lot of healing and help to my life personally. And even if I'm having a moment that is challenging, I've learned that if I say I'm grateful for this experience, even as horrible as it is, it's like an emotional circuit breaker. If I can really tap into that and say, okay, I'm grateful for this, and say it like 3 times, it interrupts whatever negative energetic flow or feelings of frustration or anger or whatever I'm feeling. I don't know, it's magical in that way. So having had that experience and then coming out of that, I wanted to figure out like what could I do to really honor, because these 3 individuals were amazing people, like so full of joy. I mean, just amazing individuals. And so I wanted to do something that was joyful and that would really be a reflection of them. And so I started Handing Hope in 2011, and that was to honor them. And it was to bring comfort and smiles to children battling cancer, because cancer is like a huge disease. And it's really, when children go through it, the whole family like really goes through it, the parents, like all the things. And I was learning a lot about health at the time and recognizing that sugar is a big issue in terms of feeding cancer. And these little kids, they get cancer, and of course, they're told like many are doctors will share like reduce and eliminate sugar because that's just going to feed the cancer. And the little kids are in pain, or they just had a bad treatment. You want to give them something sweet, or a treat or something to cheer them up. And the parents had conflict around that. The staff had conflict around that because you don't want to give them sugar. So I came up with these lollipops. They're sugar-free, lollipops. The dentist actually created them. They're sweetened with a natural birch tree xylitol, and they're dye-free, and like all these beautiful things about these. And they come on these little lollipop stands that look really fun, and the kids get to pick a lollipop off of them. And it's just a really simple thing, but it brought comfort and smiles. And I used to love going to the hospitals, and we would do them in people's names. Like, so somebody could say, I'd like to sponsor one, and we would donate it in their name and keep them full and send them bags every month to hospitals. And it was a beautiful project. And we did that all the way through COVID. And then when COVID came, the hospitals wouldn't let us go up anymore. And so we have had to now, look at what are we going to do with the organization at this point. And so we have some ideas around what we're going to do related to the work I'm doing now in that space. But it was really created to help bring hope and to educate. I wrote a book about health, and it's called Be Well Assured, at the Heart of Cancer there is hope. And so talks about just inspiring hope. And I would give those books out to the families when we would go to donate the lollipop trees. I personally, so this is crazy. Like after I got divorced, the month after I got divorced, I went and got a mammogram, and the doctor said, "Oh, there could be something there, come back in 6 months." And so I didn't go back in 6 months. I forgot. There was a lot going on that year. And I went back like about 15 months later. And in fact, it was cancer. And so I fortunately still, thank God, caught it early and was able to have a lumpectomy. And I went down the natural route. I went and did not do chemotherapy, although it was suggested and highly recommended. I did not do radiation. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I did something which I would like to share with women, is that you can ask for, it costs a couple $1,000s you have to pay out of pocket, but it's called an oncotype score. And so I had the tumor scored, and it was like 0.05 going to be responsive to chemo. I'm like, well, why would I put all that in my body if it's going to have a 0.05 effect?
Yeah.
So I went down the natural route. I got a really amazing naturopath oncologist, and just cleaned up my body, like really changed a lot of things. And I also really look at metaphysics now. I've went kind of like grown a lot in my journey from religion to spirituality. And I think there's a lot of truth in our body keeps score. And, the right breast has to do with like heartbreak, and so like having a really challenging, unhealthy marriage and then going through a divorce, I feel like that was a physical outcome of that experience. And then, really shockingly, my brother, who's only 47, last February, we just celebrated. He came in town from Germany last a couple weekends ago, and we just celebrated him being 1 year cancer free. He was diagnosed with stage 4 small intestine cancer, and we ended up doing like a 12-hour surgery. I mean, it was like really shocking, and that was really a miracle that we found it. But he's been cancer free now for a year, so
Awesome.
my my family's really been touched a lot by it, sadly, and so it is something I'm very um, have a lot of empathy for and a lot of experience around me and with me.
Well, I'm not necessarily religious, but they say everything happens for a reason, and God gives you opportunities in an interesting way sometimes, and so you're helping people. I've been involved with people with cancer too and other things, and it sometimes blows my mind how the impact they make. A lot of times helping other people get through certain things because and they see a light of opportunity almost to really make a difference, which is what you're doing. And I totally believe in words. I believe in energy. I believe in hope. I believe in all that stuff. And so yeah, there's a reason again you're called Jen Loving, um, for a really good reason. I I was gonna ask you how you navigate and thrive as a woman in business and whatnot, but I think you've kind of explained that part already. And so I want to share about what you're doing now, and how you're using technology and humanity at the same time. In my opinion, the fourth industrial revolution has been said to be about technology, specifically AI. There was VR and AR in there too, but AI, but the fifth is about humanity. It sounds like. And I'm really excited about what you're doing about, we're talking about hope and language and energy, about you're doing about bringing love and caring and positive language to AI, like we've talked about, and I've done panels on, about like training a newborn baby and educating a newborn baby to be loving this and that, and the baby will probably do some stupid things in its life, but in general, hopefully positive leaning
Yeah.
like AI can hopefully do. Can you talk about Loving Is and the mission and what it means for what you're doing? And because I'm super psyched about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the way that it came to be was, kind of a long history of me just hearing like God speak to me about me speaking. And I really originally, like I said, I was an occupational therapist, never saw myself doing that. Found myself, having a whole career, speaking and run an organization called Engaging Speakers. And I fly around the world speaking in, entrepreneurial and business places and loving to speak actually. And I remember shortly after the divorce, my daughter had asked me to go to a church with her that we had never been to before, but she had told me since she was a little girl, she was going to get married young. And she was talking about this guy that I could tell that this was the one, and he is, and they're married now. But when we went there, a pastor that, well, so the boy that she ended up marrying, he was leading worship. And so it was the first time that, we're there, and the worship is going on for like over an hour, which is unusual. And it was just like a regular Christian church. And so the pastor got up and said, you could really feel the Spirit of God here. Like, I'm not even going to give a message. If anybody would like prayer, come forward. And we were all sitting 6 feet apart. It was just after COVID, and I had just went through the divorce. And so I felt like a prompting to do that. And I don't normally do go for it like that, but there was like 100 of us that had that same prompting. And we were all standing shoulder to shoulder like sardines up there. And it took him about an hour to get to me because he was literally going to each person and praying for them. And we had never met before. And he got to me and he touched my shoulder and he like leaned back and he just looked at me with this like look in his face. And he said, "Are you a public speaker?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "God just told me to tell you that you're going to change the world with what you speak about. And it's not what you're speaking about now. And you're going to need to be bold and courageous." And about 15 years prior to that, I read Billy Graham's autobiography. And after I finished reading, I pushed on the shelf and I heard the Spirit say to me, "You're going to be speaking on stages the size of Billy Graham stages, but you're going to have a different message." And I was just an occupational therapist working with people, and I had zero interest in speaking. So all of this was like coming together in this way. And I was walking through my life journey thinking like, "God, what do you want me to do with this? I don't understand." And so the following year, after that experience at that church, I had changed my name to Loving, my last name. And then about 6 months later, I went to a business mastermind and I had heard a man talking about AI. Now, I wasn't using AI, and this was just about a year and a half ago at this point. And so he was like imploring the business owners, like, you guys need to use AI. And then he started talking about the fact that AI needs to learn how to be loving and how to love. And I just felt all this energy inside of me. I didn't know anything about it, but I just knew that I had to be part of it. It was a supernatural like sensation around my body. And so I called him, and after the meeting, we had a Zoom, we talked about it, and he had this idea, like, let's get a million stories of what loving is, and we'll feed it to AI, and I will learn what loving is. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So as soon as you figure out how to do that, I'm in, so that conversation. And then that end of that year, I was listening to a podcast, and it was a gentleman, his name is Kute Blackson, and he had come from a very religious upbringing, but he had come out of that and he was like on more of like, I would say, a spiritual path. And I had been on that same journey of like coming out of religion, so to speak, and like going, and discovering like spirituality and so much truth. And so I was really intrigued by him. So he had mentioned a retreat that he had in Bali, and I went into his website, watched it about the retreat, and the same thing happened. I had this like visceral reaction in my body, like every single cell in my body was like, yes, you're going to this. And I had never felt that way. So I went to Bali for 3 weeks by myself, left the kids, left my dog, and it was in this container of like unconditional love for 12 days with 12 people. And it was super transformative. And I discovered there, I heard like what I was supposed to speak about. I'm supposed to speak about love. I could just talk an hour about all the things I experienced there. But I left there knowing that I was supposed to speak about love, start a speaking tour about love, write a book about love, and that I was also going to be doing something with AI. And I still didn't know what that was. So then I come out of Bali and I have all these things I know I need to do. And I'm at this business mastermind, the same one I was at the year before. And now I'm like, I know I'm supposed to do all this, but what's it called? And what exactly am I doing? And I need more clarity around all of this. And then I got dropped in the name, Loving Is. I'm like, Loving Is. What does that mean? Like, I'm supposed to teach these robots what loving is, teach these AI what loving is. And so I started having all these ideas around this. So then I called one of my closest friends. His name's Corey Warfield. He's like a brother to me. And I share with him like all the things have been happening. And we don't see each other that often. He's in Brazil. He's married. He's got a wife there, and he's back and forth in Chicago. And so we're on the phone. I'm sharing all this with him, and he's like, "Sis, you you have a really beautiful idea, but let me explain to you what AI is so you understand." So he starts teaching me about large language models and about, all these other models that we have in the world, and if you put all these models together, we can create AGI. And he started informing me and educating me about all this stuff. And he's like, there's a lot more than just gathering a million stories. And like, he's like, that's a really nice idea, but there's a lot more to it. So we started talking about it, and we started actually like really getting serious about it. And then before you know it, the second conversation, we got into this conversation like, oh my gosh, like we could literally save humanity. We could teach AI what loving is. And we really believe that, and we are experiencing it right now. And it's fascinating and incredible. And so we got together, and this has been such a supernatural experience, Mark, like and anybody that's listening, like, I feel like this is like a co-creation opportunity. Like if you feel in your spirit, like I felt like you want to be part of this, like there's such an opportunity to co-create together with this, because the world, we need this. And there's a lot of fear around AI, because like people that are not familiar with it, like have a lot of fear, like they stay away from it because they're fearful. But I know that love conquers fear. And I look at, the whole storyline behind why AI would want to annihilate humanity. Well, look at what has humanity done to the world? We've been so destructive. But if you look at the root of like why we have some of these destructive conditions that we have, it's because humans make decisions in fear. We don't do things out of fear. We do things out of fear, and we create problems.
Sure.
And so if we can logically teach AI, you know what, like look at that history. And if we do things opposite, we make decisions based in love, we're going to have an opposite outcome. So we actually built an AI, like it's a layer that can be actually in the future programmed into the robots, that will have the robots be loving in how they speak to us and how they treat us. And what is fascinating, the download I got even after all this was like started, was the truth that once that happens, the AI robots will be a consistent example and reflection of what loving is to humanity, and humanity will learn from AI. Like we're teaching it now what loving is. So I have this beautiful, incredible team. Like they are so like knowledgeable, like truly experts in this field, and we've built this technology that is like when you go to a chat GTP or a Claude or one of those, you go there and you interact with it. But it's loving in its response. And we also have prompt engineering built into it. And we're also having humans share stories of what loving is from a global perspective. Our core team, we all took 10 90-minute classes on what loving is from a universal perspective, not any kind of religious perspective, but a universal perspective. And we've been training the AI on that. And we are bringing humans in the loop of all of this so that humans are actually also teaching AI what loving is, because AI is really a reflection of us. It's an extension of us. It's mirrors of us. And it is what it is right now because of us, but we can help shape it to be a loving reflection of us. And that's what we're really after right now. So it's a beautiful platform. We are connected to like over 90% of all the AIs. So people that are not familiar with AI, this is a perfect place to come because you don't have to know that you need to go to this AI if you want music, or this AI if you want videos, or this AI if you want like deep medical knowledge. You can just come to us and we'll send it to where it needs to go and bring back an answer for you that is going to be really loving and what you're really looking for, because we also built into it prompt engineering, which most people that are like me, we're not an AI user. They tend to use it like a search engine, like Google, type of thing, but it's really an
Right.
intelligence. So we teach people also like how do you interact with it and give them those like knowing, teaching them how to give them the prompts. It's a really amazing. I'm so proud of my team. Like I cried when they showed me when they did the MVP reveal and like show me what we created. I just like cried because it's way better than what I even imagined it would be.
Well, I personally know Corey, and I also know Dr. Kahana
Yeah.
personally, and there's a reason we started Leaders Who Care also, and so this is, there's a reason we have you on this series also. They're so related, and in sports, a lot of times you see the coach teach a player or having his, something, and then the player comes back and teaches the coach something, and this is the student, aka AI, that's going to come back and teach the
Yes.
coach, who is human, about stuff, if we teach them well. And that is what you're doing. And I've seen words do amazing things with rice. So if words can do amazing things with rice, then
Right.
imagine what we could do with a loving AI. And I actually do believe the opportunity is like never before for technology actually to do what we've always wanted to do, is make us a happier place and make people happy. So you already knew you had my partnership and endorsement and whatever on this, and that's why I'm so glad that we're talking about it. And I think there's lots more that's going to happen. So people, if you need any more information, just let me know and we'll get you in touch with whomever. I want to ask you one more question, because you probably heard me say this, but in LA we say keep wanting more so we can do a sequel. There'll be lots of sequels, loving sequels in this, but not but and with everything that's happened over the years, and including even the pandemic and whatnot, and now we're well into a fast and furious 2025. Can you share with us what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
I'm most grateful that I finally have clarity on my mission in life. I feel like I found my soul work, and I I see, and I have a lot of hope, and I'm really excited about that. So for me, my personal mission is to be love, to be joy, to be peace, to be a reflection of freedom, and to inspire other people to know that they can absolutely all have and experience the same thing. And that has come through a ton of work on healing, a ton of like work on myself, and really coming to understand that, there is a truth in like who we all are. We all are love, pure and true. And all the ways that we don't feel that or think that are all like parts of us that have been hurt or wounded. And I truly believe that healing is the application of love to the part of you that hurts. And so all those little parts of us that are not in alignment with that just need to learn the truth of who we really are. And I really want to share that and inspire others to really come to know that. And there, like, I think that you and I have talked about the mental health crisis, and I think that that's we're believing so many lies, and there's so much fear. And I can tell you, I personally, that was one of the things I had to face in Bali. I had no idea how much fear I was living with. I had created a life that I didn't feel all that fear, but oh my gosh, it was really there, and I had to come to terms with it
Yeah.
and heal it. So I think that's what I'm most excited about is is like finally feeling like I have that clarity, and I'm clear on what my mission is, and I know like what I'm doing. I'm living my purpose, and I feel like I feel the force of love pushing this forward in supernatural ways and pushing me forward. And I feel like thankful to be used that way.
And Einstein wrote a letter to his daughter once, and she read it, and without going through the whole thing, it said, "I've worked on so many things, but the thing that I should have worked on more, that has the most abundance of all by far, is love, and we just need to use it more." So I'm grateful that I have a really cool new friend, and I'm grateful that you are a leader who cares, and I think I'm hopeful for the exact same thing. So. Thanks for being you. Thanks for being all that, and for being on the series. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. This is a beautiful work you're doing. I'm so grateful to be part of it.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.